Steam is a giant in the PC gaming industry, and it revolutionised both playing games and publishing them. But it wasn't always this easy to get your games published and in front of players on Steam. We're starting at the very beginning of Steam's story and then working our way back to present day. So first, we need to go all the way back to 2003. Welcome to 2003. Finding Nemo and The Matrix Reloaded are in cinemas, Friends is coming to an end on TV, iTunes just launched, and Ugg boots are the must-have footwear. On the 12th of September 2003, Valve launched the digital distribution platform we all know as Steam. Steam was not a place to discover new titles though. It was the answer to the problems they were having with delivering updates for their own games. Through the Steam platform, Valve could automate the patching process and make sure all the players were on the latest version of a game. There was no storefront, and the initial design was the kind of clunky vibe you would expect from early noughties software. Between 2003 and 2005, the only games you could get on Steam were those developed by Valve, like Counterstrike and Day of Defeat. It connected players to allow them to play multiplayer, but there were no profiles or any of the social features we know today. In the early days, Steam was plagued by technical issues and controversy, like their overloaded authentication servers, locking players out of games they'd purchased, and the fact you needed Steam to play highly anticipated games like Half-Life 2, which kind of saved the platform in the end. In 2005, after Half-Life 2 had driven an influx of new users to the platform in the previous year, the first non-Valve titles were offered on the platform. There was even a proper storefront that, by 2006, was home to just under 100 games. Can you imagine a world where Steam only has 100 games? Between 2005 and 2012, the only way you could get your game on Steam was if you were a big name or you were an independent studio with a successful track record. Every single game was handpicked by Valve, who were taking their gatekeeping responsibilities very seriously. 2008 saw the launch of Steamworks, and in 2010 you could get the Steam platform on macOS as well as Windows. 2012 was the pivotal year and the start of the Greenlight Era. So what changed for Steam in 2012? First, I need to paint you a picture of what 2012 was like. Picture this: One Direction are invading the USA, NASA's rover invaded Mars, and Gangnam Style invaded our ears and our bodies. I'm not doing the dance. On Steam, the Greenlight Era began, and Valve transformed the platform from a dictatorship into a democracy. As a game developer, you could submit your game to the Greenlight portal with everything you would normally put on a Steam store page: a description, screenshots, videos, and playable early builds. So you know that $100 fee that we pay now? Valve originally used that to stem the flow of false or low effort games and donated the proceeds to Child's Play charity. Despite their efforts, unfortunately, low effort and even scam games made it onto the platform. So after you submitted your game, the users on Steam would vote for the titles that they wanted to see on the platform, and the games that got the most votes would be greenlit for Valve to publish them on Steam. To be honest, it doesn't sound like a bad process, and you knew that people would be very likely to play your game when it launched. The Greenlight Era feels like it was the beginning of independent PC game developers getting into the spotlight. It's the reason we have Stardew Valley, Undertale, Five Nights at Freddy's, and The Stanley Parable. As you can imagine, the library of games on Steam grew very quickly in comparison to the previous 9 years, and the platform saw an explosion of features like the community market where players trade in-game items for real money. In 2013, the same year we were blessed with Sharknado, Steam enabled early access and allowed users to post reviews of games on the platform for the first time. In 2014, as the platform started to slowly drown in new releases, Valve had its first go at solving discoverability on the platform. They introduced new algorithms in the Discovery update that transformed the front page of Steam and aimed to help players find games they actually wanted to play. Despite the Greenlight system seeming like a great idea, submissions were piling up behind the gates between 2012 and 2017, and there were still fake games getting through to farm sought-after Steam trading cards. Even Gabe was dissatisfied with the system. So in 2017, Valve did something drastic. Steam realised that they're not a gatekeeper, they're a bottleneck, and hundreds of quality titles are at risk of not being discovered because of the gigantic backlog of Greenlight portal submissions. So they ditched Greenlight and opened the floodgates with Steam Direct. And so began the Steam Direct era. In the same year, I was finishing my microbiology degree and starting a master's in science communication. Steam Direct was what we now know today, a pay-to-publish platform where all you have to do is complete some tax paperwork, create a store page, and give Valve $100. Valve reviews your submissions to make sure they match their policies, and that's it. Your game is officially available for players to view, wishlist, and play. Steam Direct has meant that anyone with the dream of making and publishing a game for players can now do so, but that's also part of the problem. In the first 6 months of the Steam Direct era, just over 3,300 games had been released on the platform. And in 2018, Valve cast the net even wider, allowing any game with any subject to be released. In the 8 years following the birth of Steam Direct, over 86,000 titles have been released on the platform. Of course, that discoverability problem that Valve experienced back in 2014 was breaking the chains of the Discovery update and rearing its ugly head. I think their recommendation algorithms still struggle to cope with their endless catalogue of games to this day. I mentioned before that Steam Direct opened the floodgates, and while thousands of quality titles finally got their chance to see the light of day, quite a few terrible titles also got some airtime. We started to hear the term asset flip and shovelware being bandied about, and it's still one of the biggest insults you could give to a game developer. Since 2017, lots of people have criticised Valve for stepping back from their role as platform creator, but I would argue that anyone with a genuine passion for game development has the right to release a game on the platform, especially if they're willing to risk $100 to do so. And that brings me to the fee. Some say that $100 is too low, but then a higher fee would be a bigger barrier to smaller studios, so you basically can't win. Personally, I think that Steam Direct was ultimately a good thing. Yes, there are a lot of releases and it's hard to stand out, but that game that you've spent years developing has more of a chance of being played now than it did pre-2017. You can release a real game that people can actually play, and I think we take that for granted sometimes. So this isn't the end, because 2020 served Steam another curveball that no one really saw coming. So this is what Steam looked like between 2020 and 2023. Technically, we're still in the Steam Direct era, but a virus is about to make sure that all we've ever known is ripped away from us. Depending on where you lived in 2020, from March, we were all confined to our homes, and that's when things got interesting. Big budget releases fell by 14%, while indie releases rose by 25%, thanks to the flexibility of smaller studios. 2020 was the first time that more than 10,000 games were released on the platform in 1 year, but waiting for those games was the biggest audience Steam had ever seen. In the first year of the pandemic, game sales rose by 21%, and Steam reached 20 million concurrent players. At its peak in 2023, Steam hosted 33 million concurrent players. That's 33 million people all playing games in the same place at the same time. These are huge numbers that sadly wouldn't last when everyone had to go back to work. But Valve rode the wave of popularity and successfully released the Steam Deck in 2022. This was a significant opportunity for developers publishing on Steam, because if you made your game compatible with the Steam Deck, you might get a chance to stand out and enter the console market without the need for publishing deals. In June of 2021, Valve decided to rebrand the Steam Game Festival that started in 2019 to the now beloved Steam Next Fest. The name change cemented its purpose of celebrating upcoming releases, drive traffic to demos, and boost those all-important wish lists. Gaming was a lifeline for many people in the pandemic, and more people had time to make the game they had always wanted to play and release it for others to play. Although with more people using Steamworks, its shortcomings became increasingly noticeable amongst the game developer community. like the lack of detailed regional traffic data, which made it difficult to understand where their sales were coming from so they could market their games effectively. Let's discuss the Indiepocalypse, a term used to describe the sheer volume of self-published releases being released on the platform during the pandemic era. Everyone was getting quite frustrated with Valve's hands-off approach to discoverability and its heavy reliance on opaque algorithms to surface games. People reported sudden, unexplained changes to these algorithms, leading to sharp and devastating drops in store traffic, leaving developers feeling powerless. Many developers felt Valve was not doing enough to stem the tide of low-quality games, which harmed developers trying to release innovative work. More and more people were commenting on the saturation of Steam. While the low barrier to entry was praised for allowing small teams to publish passion projects and create breakout hits, this same openness was the root cause of some markets growing exponentially as developers jumped on trends in an attempt to recreate the success of breakout hits. Steam Direct had, and still creates, a double-edged sword. It provides the opportunity, but makes capitalizing on it more difficult. Many developers felt, and still do feel, overwhelmed by the competition that makes this business incredibly difficult without significant effort being put into marketing. I would argue that the pandemic era has brought one big advantage. The game development community is bigger than ever, and problems like market saturation and discoverability have ultimately brought everyone closer together. While there are many different attitudes in game development, there are more resources than ever to help anyone make it into a viable career with an income. So we're currently up to 2023 in our eras of Steam, but the fun doesn't stop at the end of the pandemic. We haven't even got to generative AI yet. Nowadays, Steam is almost unrecognisable from its humble beginnings in 2023, where Valve were just trying to distribute their own games. And while the pandemic era was a spicy time, it's nothing compared to the last 2 years. Saturation and discoverability are still big challenges, but there's a new kid on the block: generative AI. Since 2023, generative AI has become much more widespread, affordable, and accessible to anyone with an internet connection. In the last couple of years, AI slop has successfully succeeded asset flip as the worst insult you can give to a game developer. In June 2023, Reddit rumours were flying about whether Valve was blocking the release of games containing AI-generated elements. The panic was real. So real that Valve actually released a statement to Eurogamer detailing their feelings around generative AI, stating that while developers can use these AI technologies in their work with appropriate commercial licenses, they cannot infringe on existing copyrights. It was a we're on the fence kind of moment for Valve, but 6 months later they chose a side and released a new policy that allowed the use of generative AI in games under the condition that developers declared any use of it during the submission process. Steam's content survey was updated to split out games that pre-generate assets, sound, code, etc., and games that use AI to live generate content during gameplay. With games using live generative AI, developers have to describe the guardrails they've included to stop AI generating illegal content. This comes with a backup system where players can report illegal content if it's accidentally generated during their game. To be honest though, I don't think that many players can recite the 17 types of illegal content. As a result, the number of games disclosing the use of generative AI has grown by over 800% since 2024, and that means that over 8,000 titles have been released that use generative AI. Shall we talk about another awkward subject? Do you remember when I said that Valve had implemented a sort of anything goes policy in 2008? Well, I'm sure they're regretting busting that down because now they're having to rebuild it. I'm just going to touch on this year's NSFW takedown, so here are the facts. Valve stated that the takedowns were a result of being notified that certain games might violate the rules of their payment processors, such as Visa and MasterCard. The company feared that losing these payment methods would disrupt sales for all games on the platform. Steam updated its rules to prohibit content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors and related card networks and banks. But their rules don't go beyond saying certain kinds of adult-only content. So that's it, we're right up to present day, where we sit slap bang in the middle of the generative AI era with new hurdles being thrown at us all the time. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it interesting, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on more amazing videos like this one. But I really want to know which era you think we're heading into next, so I'll watch out for that in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.